The Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus and asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children of his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and so in the same way all 7 died childless. Finally, the women also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the women be? For the 7 had married her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to the age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to the Lord.
You may be seated. Heaven. What's it like? In my congregation in Wisconsin, Debbie came up to me a bit annoyed with her husband, saying, Steve said animals don't go to heaven. Steve quickly walked over and said, it's not that. I just don't think we will care about our pets in the same way we do here. Debbie's eyes got big. And she said, then what about me? I decided that was a good time for me to leave. Whether we talk about it or not, we wonder about heaven. We gathered last week and we lit candles in remembrance of loved ones that have gone before us, and hoping that in the hope of new life beyond this time, we are resurrection people. Larry in my congregation in Iowa came to visit me on a fall afternoon holding a book, and the book was Heaven is for Real. Some of you have heard this book. The author is Todd Burpo. It was a book that was written in 2010, and it is a book about Todd's 3-year-old son who had emergency surgery. And later on, months after the surgery, his son Colton told family members that he left his body during the surgery and went to heaven, and he told about people that he shouldn't know about. Larry really wanted me to read this book. He was persistent. Every week, for 3 weeks, he asked if I read the book. Cordell knows about this. And so I decided I had better read this book, or Larry will keep coming to my office asking if I would have read the book. So I read the book, and sure enough, Larry came the following week and asked about the book, and I wasn't sure about it. I had read it, and I wasn't sure what I thought about it, and he said, what'd you think? I paused for a moment and said, I believe heaven is real. Jesus tells us about it, but I don't know exactly what it's going to be like. But I do know that our scientific, fact-finding minds want to know exactly what heaven is like. But I also know from the Bible that heaven is going to be something good and beautiful. And in addition, I know that we're called to trust God in that. Larry was a man of not many words, and he said, "Yeah, I agree," and off he went. In the book of Revelations, we get a glimpse of heaven. We get a vision from the Apostle John. The Apostle John got a vision from God about heaven. John said that heaven is cube-shaped, 1,500 miles to the side and 1,500 miles high. He talked about walls built of jasper, decorated with jewels. He talked about 12 great gates, each carved from a single pearl. He talked about streets paved with pure gold, transparent, clear like glass. He talked about the river of the water of life flowing through the city and trees of life lining on the sides of the river bend. In my confirmation class growing up, our leader talked about John's description of heaven. She told us not to take it too literally. She said that John was seeing a vision of something unlike anything that he had ever seen. And he was trying to describe it using the best words that he had. She said, imagine someone who has been blind their whole life and you needing to describe that to them the color red. It's pretty difficult because they've never seen a color before. She went on to say that's kind of the problem that John was faced with. He was trying to describe this indescribable heaven. He had no choice but to use ordinary words to tell of something that was not ordinary. What John really did accomplish was letting us know and understand that heaven is beautiful. Beautiful beyond our ability to imagine. He gave us a glimpse into a world that we are not prepared to see or understand. We get a bit of that in our gospel reading today. The Sadducees, though, are trying to trap Jesus with a trick question about heaven. To understand their question, we need to know that when a married but childless man died, Jewish law required his brother to marry the widow and to give her a child so that that dead brother's name would carry on and he would be remembered. That might seem like a good law, or not a good law, depending on how you look at it. But in those days, it was a way to protect and care for the widows in the community. The Sadducees, who didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead, posed this scenario of whose wife will she be in heaven since she had married 7 of the brothers. The Sadducees were hoping that Jesus, in their question, would trick him and that they would make Jesus look bad. But Jesus would not have any of that. Their question did not fit into his description of heaven. But with that said, Jesus' answer still didn't give us a clear picture of heaven. Author and scholar C.S. Lewis told the story of an artist who was thrown into prison. Her only light came from this window that was up very high. In prison, she birthed the sun. And as he grew, she tried to explain the outside to him. She tried to explain the wheat fields and mountains and oceans. The boy couldn't understand. So the women started to draw sketches for him, drawing the beauty of the world. But this boy still didn't understand. He thought that the world was made up of charcoal gray lines on faded paper, and that didn't seem especially wonderful to him. That story is a parable. It tells us there's something out there beyond our understanding. Like the wheat fields and mountains and oceans, they're beautiful. Heaven is beyond our imagination, and it's okay that we don't know exactly what it's like. All the readings today simply say, trust God. Let go of the worry, the control, and the insecurities, and let God be God in your life. Trusting that God's work is way better than anything that we can imagine. And for that, we say thanks be to God. Amen.